This lead poisoning scandal in China involving kids in a kindergarten is shocking the Chinese internet because how badly they're trying to censor this, trying to lie and fake of what's really going on. Now, this happened in the central city of Tianshui, and over 200 kids suffered severe lead poisoning in a kindergarten. And some of these kids are testing a blood concentration of lead for about 400 to 500 micrograms per liter, or 4 to 5 micrograms per deciliter, which is more of the standard unit. For damage to occur, the blood concentration in children would just need to reach 3.5 micrograms per deciliters or 350 micrograms per liter. And if you have levels above 5 micrograms per deciliter or 500 micrograms per liter, you could see things like IQ drop, nervous system damage, as well as behavioral problems, developmental delays as well. This is probably the biggest disaster involving children since the 2008 baby milk formula scandal, which obviously the powder was contaminated, adulterated with melamine, and that caused kidney function damage and kidney failures. Now, initially, the government investigation in the local area revealed that the blame was supposedly on kitchen staff who had added these colored dyes into pastries to make them look prettier and more colorful so that the kids will want to eat them. And it's this dye that they used which contained lead. But then the company that produces this dye came out with a statement saying that they had nothing to do with what was happening in the kindergarten, and in fact, the dye that they have doesn't even contain lead. So this is where things got really suspicious. The local government and the local hospitals are not only censoring data, revealing what the actual results are.
下面这个天水那边给的数据是143，然后我们家孩子是300。上面这个天水那边给的数据是19.44。但是还有比我们家孩子高出来的352，现在这两个孩子现在都住院治疗了。
It's literally Flint, Michigan every day in China. But they're also delaying treatments for these kids. Now, some of the parents are obviously frustrated and they've been protesting, but more parents are trying to send the kids to out-of-province hospitals to get treatments. In fact, some of them went to the nearby province of Xi'an. The parents who went to nearby hospitals got actual lab results, and this is where they found that, for example, locally they were getting something like 16.4 micrograms per liter, but then when they went to a different hospital, they got something like 361 micrograms per liter, which is, in this case, it's like 23, 24 times the number that they were getting from the local hospital. Other parents obviously saw some difference in the numbers. Some of them are 10 times more, sometimes 20 times more. But the point is, the result that they got locally was so drastically lower than the results that they got from other hospitals. And now, obviously, the pressure has gotten to some of these hospitals, for example, in Shanghai, that they're refusing the patients who are coming to get treatments. But in one particular hospital, they even set up a ward for these kids who are suffering from the lead poisoning. And the local government is saying that if you want to get free treatment for this, you have to stay in the city. You cannot go to other provinces, because in those other provinces, you obviously have to pay out of pocket for the treatment. But as a parent, you're not going to wait for that. You'd rather spend money to save your child from those serious health issues than to wait around. So can you imagine the local government is holding the parents hostage, or I guess they would be holding the kids hostage to try to, this is literally a ransom to say that if you dare to go to other provinces, well, you're going to have to pay. Like, what kind of a government is that? Now, most people believe that the problem didn't come from the pastries or the cakes, simply because it doesn't make sense. I'll explain. One of the alternatives to this is that about 15 minutes away, under 15 minutes, there's a heavy metal processing plant in the same city. And so people are speculating whether or not it's because of contamination, whether that's in the water, in the air, or in the soil, that through long-term exposure actually caused the poisoning. And some of the internet users even claim that the precise location where this kindergarten is built used to be the dumping ground for another heavy metal processing plant, specifically for lead, 20 years ago. And in fact, this owner of the kindergarten has 2 other kindergartens in the same city, but it's only this one that the kids saw this increase in the concentration of lead in the blood. So for some reason, the other 2 weren't affected. And this is where things get interesting, because if you consider, if it's the same person owning all 3 kindergartens, that means the food supplier would be the same, because there's no reason for the owner to go out of their way to have 3 different suppliers for 3 different kindergartens that's just how things work, right? It turns out the teachers at this particular kindergarten also tested and found that their blood lead concentration, one of them was about 395 micrograms per liter, the other one was about 500 micrograms per liter. So it's also quite interesting. But you have to remember, right? What the kids eat and what the teachers at the kindergarten eat might be different, considering that maybe sometimes they bring their own lunch or dinner, or maybe sometimes they just simply don't eat that, right? But what they do share together with the kids is the air that they breathe, the water they drink, and the place that they stay. So now that's a good time to talk about boosting your health and defense. You're lucky you're not in China. You don't go through this type of stuff every day. So let me talk about GinEx American Ginseng Extract. So here I have the two products here, the dropper form and also the paste, which I've been using this a lot more lately since I'm staying at home now that I'm done traveling for a bit. And actually a lot of Chinese people buy these products and ship them to China because, for one, you can't really get authentic products while you don't really know if they're authentic in China. And for two, these products are simply really good and they provide a lot of benefits. For me, for example, it does three things. It improves my sleep, my concentration, and my focus when I'm trying to work. And I've been taking them for over 2 years. They're a really great natural supplement to boost your immunity against common diseases. And starting in July, there's new promotions for the GinEx product. If you buy any of the following, for example, you get the GinEx 240 grams plus 100 grams combo, or the 100 grams times 2 bottle combo, or even just a single 240 grams GinEx bottle, and you get a 30 milliliter dropper bottle version, which is the same product, but this one is very convenient on the go. And the offer is valid for 2 bottles per order. Normally, it would cost $38 for 1 dropper bottle, but now with this offer, it's only $19 each. And with my David discount code, you can actually get an additional 15% off. So it's a great time to get GinEx American Ginseng products, and check out the link in the description and start saving this July. Back in 2005, Chinese state media reported that in the same city, 200 plus villagers suffered lead poisoning. 50 of them were kids. And it just turns out, according to some internet users' calculation, the distance between where that lead poisoning case happened to this one in 2025 is only about 10 kilometers. And like I mentioned previously, the detail was that this location where the kindergarten is built is the dumping ground for the waste products of that lead processing, the plant that caused the problem in 2006 or 2005. So literally 20 years ago, the place that they built the dumping ground is now the kindergarten that the kids are suffering from lead poisoning. Now, obviously, the local government deliberately pushes that they're saying the dye is the problem, the food is the problem. But if that was the case, like I mentioned, the other 2 kindergartens should also have the same issues. And then you talk about these kitchen staff who are hired. According to some details, some of them are getting paid less than 2,000 yuan a month, which is very low. It's like $600 a month. Some of them aren't even educated enough to know what lead is, let alone knowing the process, which I'm going to explain next. It's hilarious. So from the state media report, it says that the pastries, 3-color red date steamed cake and cornrows in the 2 samples that they obtained from this kindergarten contained lead concentration of 1,052 micrograms per kilogram and 1,340 micrograms per kilograms, respectively. So that's the concentration of lead, right? So the test done by the local government, they took a sample of this and they found 1,300 micrograms per kilograms in a diluted sample of, so they contain lead. Now, if you've done some chemistry, we'll just use parts per million, okay? So 1,300 parts per million. Now, the standard for lead for industrial dye, the concentration that is about 100 parts per million, and that's undiluted. So you're telling me a kitchen worker who barely knows what lead is, let alone know lab chemistry techniques of dilution and concentration, would spend initially a huge amount of their time trying to dilute industrial grade dye into diluted, knowing the exact measurement for the concentration, you got to go from 100 parts per million to 1,000 parts per million, right? So that requires some chemistry calculations. And they're spending this extra effort to do this process when, in fact, they could go onto Taobao or Temu or something and get a bottle of food dye for like a fraction of the cost, because God knows how much those industrial grade dye actually cost. So you're telling me the owner of this kindergarten is ordering their kitchen staff to spend extra money, extra efforts, and extra time to dilute an industrial grade dye, which, by the way, contains much less in concentration of lead, because they have to go according to standards, or else they'd be facing, lawsuits and stuff like that. And you're telling me the kitchen staff is doing that. Also, Chinese kindergartens follow a meal calendar. So everything, every week, every day of the week is laid out precisely. You know exactly what you eat, on these days. I remember telling you this story in one of my YouTube shorts, which is that in one of the meals that they always served every single week is this really disgustingly greasy soup. I forced myself to eat it and then I accidentally vomited it back into the bowl. But then because, I was really scared of the kitchen, not the kitchen, the kindergarten teacher, I just forced myself to eat all of it back again. So that was a horrible experience, and I don't hope the students go through that. But just trying to highlight to you the fact that these pastries that they're supposedly contaminated, they're not eating them every single day. They're eating them maybe once or twice a month, right? So it's not frequent enough that this becomes a huge problem when it comes to ingesting it through food. So the long-term exposure through contaminants, whether that's in the quality of water, maybe they should be checking the water pipe, or maybe it's the soil, or maybe it's the paint that they used in the school. Something else is causing the problem. It's definitely not the food. So thank you so much for watching this episode of China Insider. I hope you enjoy the content. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. If you're a chemistry expert or you've dealt with issues with lead poisoning or whatnot, show your expertise. Explain how the situation might work given the details I provided. So again, thanks for watching. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and check out GinEx, American Ginseng Extract, linked in the description. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.